his process, the methodology is called feedback marketing. So it's a process where you're garnering feedback from clients, you're cross-educating them on the services that you provide, and then you're just simply making them aware that you have capacity to bring on X amount of clients over the next quarter, over the next year, whatever time frame you want to use. So the reality is your clients are already marketing for you, but just like you, the advisor, they don't know how to do so properly. So this education campaign, if you want to call it that, can help capture what's already happening to then take those dollars and reinvest in things such as content and actual ad spend to drive additional eyeballs to you. But I think the starting point with someone with perhaps a limited budget or unwillingness to invest because they've gotten burned before is just trying to gather what's already happening in your book of business.
This is the Afternoon Advisor, where we figure out exactly why and how certain advisors are growing so fast it looks like cheating. I'm Nate Hoskin. I'm a certified financial planner practitioner. I'm also a digital marketing and a financial planning nerd. In my days, I spend my time building and breaking growth systems in my businesses and in yours. Today, we're joined by Mr. David DeCelle. Thank you so much for joining me. You are the CEO of Model FA. You're the co-founder and the chief partnership officer of WealthReach, and you've helped over 200 multi-billion-dollar RIAs get better at organic growth. Do you sleep?
A little bit.
Every once in a while, because you also have a newborn.
Yeah, 6 months old, Scotland.
Congratulations.
And she's doing great.
Good. Well, I gotta know, why do advisors suck at marketing?
So I don't know if that's fair to say, and the reason why I say that is because advisors didn't get into the business to become marketers. They came into the business to help people, and then they were tasked with having to market in order to grow. And unlike a CPA who has something called a tax season that requires people to get their taxes done, we don't have a financial planning season that requires people to do that. I also talk a lot with Dan Allison about how there's sort of a barbell right now in the industry where the old guard, so to speak, grew up in high pressure sales, hitting the phone 100 times a day, doing what they needed to do. And that's not marketing, that's sales, and it worked. And then you have on the other side of the barbell, all these advisors that got into the business to help people that are very service oriented and never really needed to actually spend time marketing and developing business because they were fed by that advisor who was the rainmaker on the front end. And I think there's also a lot of confusion in the marketplace because there's no shortage of companies and people that help advisors with marketing. So it causes this paralysis by analysis situation. And I also think when we did a webinar together a while back, you had referenced a study where people get a 1.2x return on their marketing spend after 12 months. So they basically break even.
Yep.
And as a result, they think, oh, this isn't working. So then they go and restart that clock, and they restart that clock. So they try things over and over and over again, as opposed to sticking with something and seeing it through, because that same study that you referenced, they get a 6x return after 5 years if they stay the course. So I think it's a function of people getting into the industry, not necessarily thinking that they need to market, realizing they have to, and then being confused on how to actually do that, where to start, who to trust. So I don't think it's that advisors suck at marketing per se. I think that having to market isn't what they initially signed up for.
Right, they showed up, they're like, I didn't ask for this, but I understand it's a pivotal part of being a business owner so that I can continue to be an incredible advisor. I think you absolutely nailed it. So let's dive into that a little bit. There are far too many tools, frankly, too many to choose from, even from you and I who have been looking through them and vetting all of them. Where would an advisor start if they said, okay, I want to start this marketing thing that we think of as this broad topic? How do you boil that down to something we can operationalize?
So I think one other key point that I'd like to add to that question is, because this is relevant for some folks as well, if you're unwilling to take the risk on spending a ton of money and you just need something to begin creating some momentum, and then take those newfound dollars and reinvest into marketing. So I want to kind of focus there. Great. So I brought up Dan Allison previously, and he spent a couple decades doing research and has found that 98% of clients are willing to refer. They're happy enough with their advisor that they'd want to tell their friends, their colleagues, their family members about that person. And 51% of those folks think that they have referred. So if you have a book of business of 100 clients, you should have gotten about 50 referrals, but talk to any advisor who has 100 clients, they probably did not get 50 referrals.
We know
so
there's
a disconnect there. So his process, the methodology is called feedback marketing. So it's a process where you're garnering feedback from clients, you're cross-educating them on the services that you provide, and then you're just simply making them aware that you have capacity to bring on X amount of clients over the next quarter, over the next year, whatever time frame you want to use. So the reality is your clients are already marketing for you, but just like you, the advisor, they don't know how to do so properly. So this education campaign, if you want to call it that, can help capture what's already happening to then take those dollars and reinvest in things such as content and actual ad spend to drive additional eyeballs to you. But I think the starting point with someone with perhaps a limited budget or unwillingness to invest because they've gotten burned before is just trying to gather what's already happening in your book of business.
Right. Kind of go find the revenue and then make the investment instead of doing the lopsided version where you feel like you're out and over the precipice from day one and this needs to work or you're in the negative. You're like, well, I already did marketing 101. I went and got really good referrals. Now I can invest. What if we flip that and we talk about someone who has a very limited client base or they're just starting out?
That's where it becomes a little trickier. So there's a number of different things that you can do to start generating awareness around how you help people, who you help, in no particular order, content. And you save money on that by doing it all yourself. Or I know you guys are working on some stuff, depending on when this is going to be released, that can help with folks as well. So I think that's one thing. I think another thing is just simply making people aware, this is what I do, this is who I help. There's a lot of folks in your natural market that can actually benefit from the things that you provide. So just making them aware that, hey, I'm here to help if you ever need it. I also think there's tools out there that aren't overly cost prohibitive, such as ours, frankly, WealthReach, where you can identify who's hitting your website. You can identify people in motion that are across the internet doing research related to the things that you do, and you can email them, you can pick up the phone, you can introduce yourself and start generating that activity. And then another one that comes to mind is building relationships with people who already have established books of business, such as a CPA, an attorney, a property casualty insurance agent, where you can build a relationship with them, share your value prop, and ultimately get introductions from them. And as your book of business grows, you're then in turn able to reciprocate and send introductions their way as well. So it's more kind of rolling up your sleeves and, like, frankly, getting to work and doing anything and everything you can to make sure the most amount of people know who you are. All those things combined together can effectively get you off the ground, and then you have your established book of business to where you can tag on the referral piece. Yeah.
Do you feel like the inundation of new tools that we've seen, especially with vibe-coded AI tools, that sort of thing, do you think it's kind of taken us back to basics?
I think that's a good question. I think that with the tools that are being introduced, it unlocks, at least in my mind, it unlocks another avenue that was previously untapped. But I also think that if you over-rotate in that direction too much and rely like purely on, because all the new tools are all digital, right? They're AI focused, you can over-rotate in that direction and lose the human component around what it takes to actually build a successful business through building great relationships. So I think going back to basics to me means investing in the client relationships that you have so that you can turn those folks into advocates so that you have complementary systems. You have the human system, you have the digital system, and then as a result, you have a well-oiled, well-rounded machine. So I would just be cognizant not to over-rotate too much to rely exclusively on technology, but use the time saved through technology to then reinvest that time back into the people that you're taking care of.
Yeah. And I think that cycle is actually really illustrative of what advisors are struggling with right now. At least in my opinion, it's that there are 4 big components to that cycle. So the first component is serving your clients, right? Doing a really, really good job. The next one is that rotation that you're describing. What should I be doing? How much should I be rotating into this tech? If I am adopting new technology, which technology am I adopting? The third element is using that technology to free up time for yourself. And the fourth element is taking that time back and using it to go and do that other thing, whether it's more marketing, it's more client service, hiring, training new staff, training new advisors, whatever it might be. And I fear that a lot of advisors are stuck in the second stage, where they're just in that analysis paralysis that you were describing. So talk me through that. I'm an advisor. How are you consulting these firms to look at new technology and to look at the things that are coming out right now?
So I would first want them to do some level of an audit. And what I mean by that is take a look at the business, what's currently working, what's not working. Because when you say technology, we can talk about that on the marketing and business development front, or we can talk about that on the back end operation. So let's sort of speak to that as a whole. So with whatever's working, I probably wouldn't worry about that right now. With anything that's redundant, I would try to fix that, because if it's redundant, technology can usually play a role in there. So I have a client, his name's Scott, out of Georgia, and he uses a tool that I shared with him called Scribe. And Scribe, in effect, is an SOP creation tool. Okay. And so what he has his team do is every single activity that they're doing on the operation side, on the marketing side, he has them run Scribe in the background. And as soon as they're done doing that task, you have a beautiful SOP with screenshots, highlights what buttons was clicked, and then he has 2 different AI consultants. One that's focused on automation and connectivity between different tools that they're using, and then another one that's focused on creating AI agents that can step in and handle some of those redundant things. So what he does is he takes the SOPs, gives them to both of them, and says, you guys figure out how to fix this. And what he's really focused on is freeing up his team from sort of the basic lower level administrative oriented things so that they can level up in their career, they can get paid more, and frankly they can scale at a much larger enterprise with not your typical headcount that you would need. So I think it starts with performing some sort of audit, just so you have an idea as to what's going on currently, and then bring in the appropriate team members, bring in the appropriate vendors, consultants, whatever you want to call them, because they're going to have an objective look at the business. And frankly, there's been plenty of times where I've gone into someone's business, I'm like, well, why are you doing it that way? And they're like, oh, never thought of that. But they're so close that they can't see the forest through the trees. So having that objective third party come in and help analyze alongside them makes a big impact.
Yeah. And then when you make the selection, so the consultant comes in, you go back and forth, you talk to the AI agents, they analyze, they come up with ways to optimize, you make an inevitable decision about technology, right? Do you then do that loop again? Are you always in audit mode, or is it kind of a pick and stick, like this is what we're doing now? So, how static should that be?
So that's where you can quickly start playing business, so to speak, where you feel productive, but you're not helping any more people. So I don't think it's a continuous process. I don't think it's a let it stick and never reevaluate it again. I think you get a quick temperature check every 6 months, and then once a year you evaluate and say, okay, is there anything that we should be fixing again? Because the reality is, whatever they use to fix their current problems, within 12 months, within 2 months even, based on how quickly AI is moving, there could perhaps be a better solution. I have another client, Trevor, out of California, and I started working with him 2.5 years ago. He was at 570 million, and at the end of 2025, he hit $1 billion, and he's been super focused on growth. And he said to me a few weeks ago, he said, this is the first time in my career where I feel like I'm out of the loop with where tech is in our industry, because they've had their blinders on for 2.5 years just growing. So like that time frame is too long. So there should be, pick January as an example. Every January, you're out in the marketplace, you're hopping on demos, and you're trying to evaluate what's out there since the last time I looked, and is this additive? Is it repetitive? I already have this taken care of, and then make a decision from there. Take a look 6 months. Is everything working good? Cool. Okay, let's go deeper 6 months after that point. So I don't think that you should be playing business every week, every month, and trying to change things that you already changed, but you definitely don't want to be stale because things are moving so quickly.
Yeah, I like that approach, because then the loop doesn't become recursive, where you're taking all the time freed up by your tools to just go look at new tools and changing that system that's already working, but you do have something built in to be able to do that. And so many advisors are in this loop right now. I like that you mentioned the growth side versus the operations side versus all the different elements where you could be implementing new tech and that sort of thing. But I would say that the highest level of interest right now from advisors is in this world of organic growth, and picking systems that help you grow without needing to do what we would consider to be inorganic. I would classify that as big sales teams, paid ads, those sorts of things feel inorganic to me. Before we dive in, how would you define organic?
I think about it a little bit differently than that in terms of definition. So the first thing I would say is anytime you go on LinkedIn recently over the last 6 to 12 months, everyone's talking organic growth this, organic growth that, but all they're doing is they're talking about the outcome. They're not talking about the steps and the systems and the processes that it takes to actually get there. So Dan and I recently wrote a book called The Organic Growth Revolution, because frankly we were sick of everyone talking about the outcome but not the step-by-step plan. Totally. So we spent a lot of time put that together. The way that I define organic versus inorganic is a little bit more rudimentary than how you put it, which is inorganic. I view that as M&A. I view that as market growth, right? That's sort of out of your control, whereas organic growth is how many more people are you helping in a given year, and what's the level of assets that they've entrusted with you. Period. That's organic growth, is new families that you're having an impact on. I do think that paid ads, I do think that categorically, things like that can be categorized underneath organic growth, because at the end of the day, the purpose of that is to get in front of new people that you can help, that can in turn entrust you with the money that they have.
Interesting. So distributing your messaging, your education, however that might be, whether that's to clients so they become better referrers, whether that's to new prospects through paid ads, organic social media, anything of that sort, that would live under the organic growth definition.
Correct. And given your background, I understand your definition because of organic reach versus paid reach.
Totally, so within digital marketing.
But I don't think that paid ads is inorganic. I think it's another channel to get the outcome of organic growth, which in my definition is helping more people.
Got it. Okay, so we want to help more people. Let's play a game. We're going to build an RIA together. If we're building an RIA and we walk in with 0 clients, we say, all right, how are we going to grow organically based on your definition? Walk me through how you would think about that.
Mm-hmm. So let's first start under the assumption that there is a certain level of resources that we have access to do this the right way, as opposed to you and I are fresh off the street, we have no capital, and we're just trying to muscle.
We're not quite bootstrapping it. Yeah, it's not like the last $2 in our pockets.
Exactly. Okay. So I think that becoming content machines is a non-negotiable. Putting your message out there, allowing people the opportunity to get to know you from afar, build a relationship with you at scale, and inviting them into your ecosystem because you're entertaining, you're adding value, and you're consistent. And that's probably the most important piece, is just consistency, with your content. I also think that rather than trying to get a service-oriented advisor who all they want to do is take care of people, trying to get them to get the business off the ground, I would invest in a salesperson or a sales team where they have no interest in the ongoing relationship, but they get a high, so to speak, off of going and getting that person's attention and being able to bring them into the ecosystem to ultimately get help, but then they want to go find that next person. So the more firms that we come across and the larger that they are, they have business development teams where all they do is focus on identifying new people to help. So I would do an endless amount of content. I would bifurcate your sales and your service team. I would also make sure that you have a mechanism to be able to target the right people. So what I mean by that is people who are already in the market for the things that you do. So these are people on the internet that are researching things like retirement planning, financial, like we can bubble those people to the top with technology now. And I would get them into your ecosystem so they see your content. I would tap them on the shoulder with an email, and I would deploy the sales team to give them a call and introduce yourself to them. Those are people in motion. They just need to be tapped on the shoulder. Your competitors don't even know about them yet. They're just on the internet doing this research. So those would be really the three things that I would start with, is content, bifurcating the business development and the service team, and then making sure that you're deploying your business developers on the right group of people that have the highest degree of being interested in taking a meeting with you when you introduce yourself.
Okay, so the sales team or the salesperson on day one is receiving leads from the content and surfaced from people who are on your website?
On your website, and then just across the internet. So at WealthReach, we have what's called offsite intent data. So these are people that didn't make it to your website, but you can filter down to your particular area. You can filter down by net worth and age and things, all the typical things you can filter with any of these tools. But where we take it a step further is we have a system essentially that collects cookie data all across the internet, and we're able to identify people who are actively researching the things that firm, our firm actually in this example, what our firm would be helping people with. Yep. And then you can target those people. You can take that data and you can run ads directly to people that are in motion right now.
So retargeting of some sort.
Retargeting, it's way more efficient from an ad spend perspective because they're more likely to take action on whatever it is you're asking them to do. They're way more likely to take action on the things that you're putting in front of them. So they don't have to, because frankly, when we put up a website for our new firm, XYZ Financial, we're not going to have any traffic.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's plenty of traffic across the internet on the things related to what we're helping with. We just need to go tap those folks on the shoulder in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So if we're going to go tap them on the shoulder, we're going to be able to get that offsite intent, and we're going to have content running. So after a while, we're going to have visitors to our website. We're going to be able to collect that sort of data, right? So then what do we do with the website? Are we concerned with SEO optimization? Are we trying to use that as another way for them to discover us? What does the website serve for us?
So the website's sort of like the hub, if you will. So that's sort of the source of truth. Someone's going to see your content, but people are still going to go on your website. You want to make sure that that's dialed in, and I wouldn't say you want to be overly concerned with SEO, period, but rather you want to be concerned with SEO and AEO, because a lot of folks are getting hit on their SEO right now because the consumers are going to ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and Gemini, and they're asking their questions there. So the traditional form of SEO is still relevant, but you also want to have a look on, are you showing up in these search engines as well? So that's critically important to ensure that when someone types in financial advisor focusing on retirement planning in Miami, where we're at right now, that you pop up. And if you don't pop up, you want to make sure that there are hundreds of landing pages with different iterations with the particular location, the different things that you help with, so that you're more likely to be surfaced for that person that's looking for help and guidance in that moment. So SEO and AEO are incredibly important, and there are ways in which you can spin up hundreds of landing pages in a short period of time to be effective in both of those categories.
Yeah. That sounds like something that if we were doing this 10 years ago, we never would have been able to feasibly do. Just go through and spin up hundreds and hundreds of landing pages. So that seems like a great implementation or a great use case for technology, right? Same thing on the content side where it's like, okay, I just need a way to do this at scale faster than I could at the beginning. Same with the SEO and the AEO, right? So how would you envision that working? Is it thousands? Is it hundreds? Are they updating? Like how are we doing those pages?
More to come on that here soon. But what I will say is best practices are you want to have a system, have a process, have a team that is not just blindly putting up blogs or blindly putting up different landing pages, but rather doing research on a regular basis and figuring out what are people searching. Okay, build a landing page for that. Build different iterations of that landing page. Something that ranks well now may not rank well 3 months from now, 6 months from now. So that ongoing audit needs to be recurring. Yep. So that if something's dropping in the ranks, you can refresh that and push it back up. So having a system, having a tool in place to be able to review that stuff consistently. Like when people set down the path of building SEO, at least the SEO folks that I know, they do a good job setting expectations. They say, hey, you're not going to see anything in the first month, in the first 2 months. Like this is a 12 to 18 month journey to notice a considerable improvement in your rankings. Now, I do think that can be sped up, but it's a long-term thing, and it's amorphous. It's tough to grasp until you all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got 1,000 visitors this month, whereas last month I was at 400. And then you have 1,500. Now you know it's working, but it's a continuous thing. Your website, it needs to be a living and breathing piece of a piece of your process as your hub. And unfortunately, most, not just advisors, but most companies out there view it as an online billboard that isn't reviewed or refreshed for years until someone finally convinces them to sell them a new website, and then they fall in that same trap where they build it, they launch it, and then they let it sit for 2 or 3 or 4 years until they do anything. Like this needs to be an every week activity if you really want to drive additional eyeballs to the site, which then with Wealth Reach, we can identify who's actually hitting the site if they're not filling out a form or they're not, downloading a lead magnet or, something of that nature. They were interested, they just didn't have the audacity yet to reach out proactively. All you got to do is tap them on the shoulder and invite them to meet with you. So
right.
That's
they
how
might have been right there.
They were right there.
They might have been sitting on your booking link. They already know your pricing. They already know exactly what we do. They know what services we offer. We probably know that they are a fit. They just needed one more nudge.
Just one little friendly tap on the shoulder. Yeah. An invitation, if you will. And now they feel wanted, they feel important, and they feel reassured that, okay, I may not have taken that step, but at least and now you do help them. Let's fast forward, and they're so grateful that you reached out to them. right? So I think that a lot of advisors, when they think about growth, I think they do so too selfishly. They talk about revenue, they talk about AUM, and they talk about the things that they can do in their business and their personal life when they hit certain milestones. And that's fine, but there needs to be an acknowledgement that none of that is possible until you're helpful to someone else, one person at a time. So if you can start thinking about growth less about your personal and business milestones as it relates to revenue and AUM, but rather start tracking how many more people you're helping on an annual basis, it totally reframes your way of thinking, where you don't think that you're banging the phones or sending out emails to get people to meet with you. You're now viewing that as, this is what is required to help the amount of people that I want to help. And that vibe that you put out there, it's interesting. Like when I first got into the business as an advisor, I was in the mindset of like growth for me, right? And being selfish about that. And it was amazing. It was so tough to get clients. And since my mindset shifted over the last 7-8 years to where I just genuinely want to help people, there's more business coming in than I know what to do with. And I'm trying way less. And I think, for me, like I'm a believer. I think for me, like it's God's way of rewarding you for your positive intentions and your correct intentions. Whereas if your intentions are more selfish, He's going to make you struggle a little bit until you wake up and realize that, hey, you don't have an opportunity to grow until you help that next person. That's my belief anyways.
I love that. And I think that might be at least a large portion of why there is so much buzz around organic growth right now, is that thing you said at the very beginning of this podcast, that advisors got into this business not wanting to be marketers. They didn't get into this business necessarily wanting to be salespeople. They got in just wanting to help people. And organic growth is the way that you just focus on helping more people.
You masterfully just brought that full circle.
It's amazing. It's such a good way of envisioning it, because you're right. Organic growth is so amorphous. We, as two people who work actively on organic growth, have completely different definitions for what the thing is. Mm-hmm. And yet, I think we can absolutely agree that the way we would implement all of this in our faux RIA is that with our content, we would go and try to help 1 million people for free. With the people who come to our website, we would go and give them that friendly nudge on the shoulder that just says, hey, you were interested in this. Like, I just want to make sure that this didn't fall through because of some random hesitation. And for our clients, we would say, well, we want to be helpful to you and provide as much value as possible so that you're well enabled to go be helpful to someone else by referring them to us. Every single component of the business is around, how do I help that next person? That's organic growth. It's not paid ads versus organic social media content. And like M&A, you're right, your definition, I think I'm beginning to adopt. I think it's the more accurate one, because M&A is not like, oh, okay, we're just gonna like go and help this many more people. It's like, no, we're buying a business, right? Organic growth is, how can I help 1 more person? How can I help 2 more people, 100 more people? And you will naturally achieve whatever that percentage growth rate was that you were targeting. It just might be a different number.
It's a different mindset. It's a different number, like you said, that you're tracking. And frankly, when I first got into consulting, I was 27, and I had a friend of mine, because most of my clients were in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they said, well, what value are you adding to someone who's way more successful than you, that has way more time on this earth than you? And I said to him, I said, you'd be surprised, but when I work with someone at that age, my goal is to get them to fall in love with their business all over again. They've been doing the same thing for years. They've sort of plateaued in their growth, because even the old guards, as I referenced before, that weren't afraid to pick up the phone, that just hustled their way to success, like they're burnt out and they don't want to do that anymore. So as a result, they fall out of love with the business because what they fell in love with to begin with was that rush of, I got someone on the phone, I booked them, and now I have an opportunity to help them. So when I work with them, I do my best to get them to fall in love with their business all over again, to remind them the reason why they got into the business in the first place, and give them new strategies and new outlets to be able to get in front of those people, as opposed to needing to hit the phone 100 times a day like they grew up doing in the wirehouse or wherever they were born in the industry.
What does that look like? When you have a client and they fall in love with their business all over again, what does that meeting afterwards look like?
I'm not going to speak to the meeting afterwards because I think there's a better answer to your question. So anytime in my life where business was going really well, but my personal life was out of whack, I felt off. If my personal life was going well, but my business was out of whack, I felt off. And if both of those things were going well and I wasn't intentionally being of service to other people outside of what I'm compensated to do, I felt off. So what's interesting is oftentimes when your business is struggling, even if it's just your mindset about your business, your relationship with your spouse isn't awesome.
Yeah.
You're out of shape. You're not taking care of yourself. You're drinking too much. Like, there's a whole host of other things. So what's interesting is when they fall in love with their business again, their relationship with their spouse is better. They're in better shape. They're happier. They're more fun to be around. They're rekindling, prior friendships that they sort of put to the side. So it's not the next meeting that's impactful after that. It's the rest of their life is improved, all by going back to the reason they got into the business in the first place, which is to help people. And when they have that realization, because they were so far off from that from when they first started, they have that realization. It's almost like a slap of reality to where they say, I need to do this better at home. I need to do this better for myself. So fall in love with their business again has a rippling effect to all the other areas of their life. And that's the most rewarding thing, when someone thanks me for reminding them that they should take their spouse out for a date night a couple times a month. Like, I've had their wives, reach out to me, say thank you. And that's why my relationships are 3, 4, 5, 7 years long, 8 years long since I've been in the business, where usually a consulting engagement is has a shelf life for 6 to 18 months, because they're feeling the impact in all areas of their life, and that's incredibly rewarding for me.
That's incredible. I am a little speechless just thinking about that, because I felt that on a very personal level. And I love that you framed it as an expansion, not a limitation, because for me, in my businesses, when I'm out of whack like that, my first thing is, what can I cut? What can I remove from one of these things? What can I do less in my relationship so that I have more bandwidth to deal with the thing that feels off? Or what can I cut to go the opposite direction? So I'm always in this kind of budgeting mindset of like, what can I spend less on? Not spending currency, but spending my time and energy. When we instead look at it as a reframe or a change in mentality, it expands the number of things that I'm excited to do. Again, going back to the beginning of this episode, you have an advisor who says, I didn't ask for that. I didn't sign up to do marketing. I didn't sign up to go and do all this organic growth stuff. And so when my life feels out of whack, I'm going to look at my business and say, what can I cut? Well, I can cut that email thing, or I can cut that video thing. I can cut that other project that I'm working on. When instead you reframe it as like, no, the reason I got into this business was to help people. And each of those things allow me to do that for more and more. It makes you that much more excited to go and do that work, and balances everything else.
Mm-hmm. And at least anecdotally in my experience, you're doing a good job with that, because when I called you the other day, you sent me the voicemail and said, hey, I'm on the walk with my wife.
Yeah.
So you still have some balance, and I think it's important. That's an important example because like the things that you do in your personal life and your business life and in service of others, like in service of others, an example of that is like holding the door open for the awkward amount of time, to where they start jogging, behind you, they feel bad. Or when I stopped at Publix before coming to the Airbnb to pick some stuff up, I was bringing my carriage out and someone, asked like, hey, do you have any cash? I was like, I got no cash on me. I brought the carriage back, to Publix and I saw an ATM and it was like, oh, let me take out $20 for this guy. Like little things like that don't have to cost money, but those little things have a big impact on them, but a way bigger impact on you. That walk that you took with your wife where you were present and because there's been times when I've been on the walk with my wife where I answered the phone. It totally erases the gesture, right? So I'm not perfect in these categories by any means, but like all you need to do is be present, even if that's for a 30-minute window, and you feel full, they feel full, and then you're re-energized to go and help more people in your business and vice versa, depending on whatever scenario you want to articulate. But it's just having that level of intentionality, and it deepens relationships all around you, but more specifically, it deepens a relationship with yourself. And when you're able to do that, it's sort of like when you get in an airplane, secure your mask before helping others. Like if you're out of whack, you can't be there for your wife, for your kids. You can't be there for your clients. Like you need to take care of yourself. So all these things that we've been talking about in the last 5-10 minutes, they're all connected. So
it's been an interesting emotion that I've had with AI because I've seen so much dooming about AI and a lot of hatred and vitriol, some of it very justified, and also a lot of excitement and just like, this is where the future is going. And I have felt very destabilized emotionally around like, how do I feel about AI? And in that emotion, I had to dig in and be like, okay, then what are the actual effects on my life that AI is having? What have I noticed that I can put a finger on to say this is how it has changed? And really, what it has done is it has allowed me to create systems that just gave me that time back, coming back to that 4-stage cycle, right? I was able to do that tech audit. I was able to adopt a couple of systems, get that out of the way, free up a little bit of time. And what I've been able to do more than any other time in my career is notice that time that I got back. And it's like getting $1 back when like you get change or something like that. And you get $1 back and you look at it and you're like, what am I gonna do with this? And there's a tip jar, there's a person sitting outside, or there's someone that you can give the gift to. And I noticed it felt so real for me because I had a whole bunch of content that I needed to write and I was just stressing. And I was able to just let that run, have an agent working for me and at least giving me a V1 that I could edit. And I went over to the restaurant that's like catty corner to our office. It's called Tony P's. I love it. Grant is probably sick of it by this point because I take him there all the time. I'm like, hey, you trying to get Tony P's? And I didn't necessarily have any more time. Like I still needed to get back from that lunch, but it had bought me so much brain space because I checked that off in my mind that I sat there and I was like, I've been to this restaurant 40 times and I love it. And I've never once gotten anything for my wife. And they have these amazing gluten-free lemon meringue pies with just like a stack of meringue on top. And I got that for her. And she was like, where did you get this? And I had to admit to her that I'd been there so many times and had not once thought of her. And like that is the most tangible thing that AI has purchased in my life, was a little bit of extra brain space that I could go and spend on the people that I loved.
Quick personal example for my business specifically. So I'd say 2 years ago, I was able to have, call it 15 to 20 meetings a week. So think of it as 15 to 20 people that I had an opportunity to help that week. And the reason why it wasn't more is I had to do follow-up notes. I had my own action items from those meetings. I needed a break here and there because it's a lot to juggle conversations and then all the back-end follow-through. But things as simple as a note taker with a custom prompt that puts together the follow-up email and captures it perfectly with all the action items, and even things still simple but more complex than that, where you're just leaning into AI for certain deliverables that you're putting together for clients. And frankly, they don't care if you're utilizing AI as long as the end product has your personal touch on it and it's legit. They're stoked. Fast forward to today, I keep between 50 and 60 meetings a week. So I'm able to help at least triple the amount of people that I was able to help just 2 years ago because of technology. So I used to be anti-AI, like advocating against it because I was pro-human. And then I got a little taste of it. And I realized that if I reallocate that free time to more people, I can help more people. So for me, I've done a complete 180. And now I'm pro-AI because it allows us ultimately to become more human if we're intentional with reallocating our time in that way. So in just the last 2 years, I've been able to triple the amount of people that I help on a weekly basis because of AI.
You said it far better than I ever could. AI is helping me to be more human. And for that, thank you so much, David. This was such a pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank you for being on here.
Thanks.
Cheers.